So yeah, very interested, and he sent his armies out to search for rare books and rare knowledge. And what interested me the most about him was his egalitarian. He believed all creatures should live in harmony. All right. So in his quest and search for knowledge, he learned how to speak different languages. He had an army of monkeys that he taught philosophy. His chief of staff was a grand parrot, right? Um, no, no,
There are no spoilers in this
these are
book.
characters
Trust
in the
me.
book. These are characters in the book.
Please go on. No spoilers. Trust me.
Yeah. So the question is, like, characters in this book did you specifically enjoy exploring, and aside from the Caliph?
So, for the book, and you really sometimes we approach every book in the same manner. And I like Umar he described his books as books you don't read, you have to enter them. They are woods, they are fictional woods. You enter into those books. So we run into problem when we approach every book in the same manner. And if you approach this book as a traditional literary fiction, you won't get it because you'll be interested in human characters. Whereas the human characters are just there to, they are vehicles. They are, which is the book. So I feel I loved, I was very much interested in writing the book.
The book
But
itself.
I'm also interested in, I was interested, in fact, I was, how will I put it? I'm still thinking about the narrator, Garba Dakaskus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Something we spoke about the Grand Vizier, which was the parrot, and something he said, which you also referenced, is a book is a spirit which dwells in the spirit realm, and the universe is the library. And I know later in the book, when the book is coming to life, we also learn about the portal of potential characters and ideas, which is almost like a realm of its own, some purgatory of sorts, where characters and ideas that are not fully formed almost take shape before they come into the world of the story, right? Is that something you could speak to? I would like to know what sort of personal experience shaped the idea that you have to say a book is the spirit.
Okay, so I believe, and I also know that there are some people that believe that books have they are like doors or gateways to magical portals of enchantment. Fortunately or unfortunately, I'm one of those people. When I was a child, I, I think this book doesn't want us to talk about it. We should just end this section. So as I was saying, some people believe that books have magical powers, and they have the ability to transport us into worlds of knowledge, portals of magic, and all that. And I believe I'm one of those people. When I was a child, the prayer I was taught to pray, not to get riches or long life, but I was taught to pray for knowledge. Rabbi Zidni Ilman. Oh God, grant me knowledge. And so I've always grown up with that idea, thinking that books are powerful, that they 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 give us access into something. They take us somewhere. They take us into different realms, and they grant us knowledge. So coming to the portal of potential characters and ideas, I think that is in the head of the author within the story. And as a writer, I can relate with that because we're always gathering materials. Even as we're here, we're gathering materials. There are people we'll meet. And I think one person who I greatly admire with what he does, and I feel he's a very observant person, even though he doesn't look it, is Abubakar Adam Ibrahim. If you read his books, like I get astonished, how did he know this? Which means he is a keen observer. So I believe that everyone who calls himself a writer or who is interested in writing is always observing, because Ben Okri said rightly, and I agree with him, that writing does not come from writing. Writing comes from life.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that's very, very profound. I do also agree with you that literature in many ways helps you expand your worldview on a very personal level. Reading this book, there were a lot of things I was delving into for the first time, right? So, with the book, there was a lot of Muslim and Arabic history. There was also a lot of surrealism and Sufism. You've also spoken about the people like Calvino and Umberto Eco, who helped you shape the book in terms of style. But in terms of all of these other ideas, the traditional history, the surrealism, the Sufism, who would you say you immersed yourself in while writing the book?
Okay, interestingly, after I read Calvino, Calvino led me to Borges.
Okay.
When he led me to Borges, I became so obsessed with Borges. And Borges led me back to his other successors, Umberto Eco or Han Pamuk. So I read Pamuk. And Pamuk used a similar material I used in all his books, particularly My Name is Red. And so when I read My Name is Red, it's about Istanbul. He was talking about the Caliph. And so astonished. I said, well, if Pamuk can use this material, I also have material and I can use it. Something that at first he wrote in the traditional way, he was right, but he had this ancient material, heritage. He didn't know how to use it. But when he encountered Calvino and Borges, he knew he could use it in the Borgesian and Calvino sense. And I think that's what I tried to do.
Okay. So in many ways, it's a blend of sorts, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
speaking of blending, we know aside from being a writer, you're also a helicopter pilot, right? And I'd like to find out, especially in this world where we spoke about it yesterday, it's very, very rare you see people do writing and writing alone, right? So you're blending professional interests, you're blending different parts of your lives, and you're also blending all of these different writer. So I'd like to ask, from your own point of view, how do you blend the rigorous discipline of military life with the very, very fluid, expressive, creative nature of your work?
So I think I will not be able to write in the military. Um, it's the military life is a very regimented life. So by writing the way I write is a form of escape. So I feel it's compatible, and I'm grateful for that.
All right. And for, let's say, for in terms of giving advice to younger writers who are also looking to approach blend your life with creative life, right? They should factor in, or the top three things they should live by as pillars.
Important thing for an aspiring writer to do is to read, read. Then, in terms of blending the professional with writing, you just have to find time. Time is precious. It is important you create time, you dedicate time, and write, and keep writing.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your explanations. Thank you for also speaking about your process and the story. I'd like to invite you to just give us one more special partying treat from your work, just so we can have a taste of it again.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll be reading from page 235, if you have the book. But before I say this, I know the book is not out. The copies we have are festival editions. So we discussed Umberto Eco, and I remember, so Umberto Eco is an Italian novelist, very famous. He's famous for his work, The Name of the Rose, Il Nome de Rosa. But when he wrote The Prague Cemetery, a journalist went to interview him, and he's a bibliophile, he has a lot of books. So the journalist walked through a corridor, which he calls the corridor of literature. And the only thing you find there are works of fiction, poetry, drama. So when she passed through the corridor of literature, she met him in his study and she began to interview him. The first question she asked him was, "You have so many books. Have you read all of them?" And he said, "To read a book is enough to just touch, and by a mysterious fluid." So if you have not read my book, if you are sitting next to someone who has the book, just touch it. You will understand. Everything will get into you. So I'll be reading from page 235. Page 235. Since my first consciousness, she had always been there, lying dormant in the portal of potential characters and ideas in my author's mind. But I had never seen her fully formed and in flesh until now. Glory be to Allah. I took it, and a torrent of thoughts began to flow in my head. Just like I and many others, the blue damsel had lived in our author's brain for a long time. If the damsel could exist now, fully formed, and since she had not been brought into being by our author, then there had to be another doorway to existence. "You are a clever one," a raspy voice uttered. I turned around. I couldn't see anyone. "A very clever one," the voice said again. "Who are you?" I asked. "Look closely." I was convinced I was hallucinating. "You cannot see me because you do not exist. It is you who does not exist," I said, more intensely. "You cannot see me because it is you who does not exist. You are nothing but an idea of a character in an author's brain. But I can see you, myself to you." The voice boomed. "Turn around." I turned around. A man in white robes, floating on air, stared back at me. He was Labaran, the liar of Lambara, the legendary king of lies. "You are a clever one. Character to discover the byway to the realm of literary immortals. See?" He hovered nearer. "Storytellers have never accessed this realm, but you persisted, and here we are." I smiled. "Determination and resilience, the guardians have asked me." "Yes, to attain existence, compel your author to tell your story, make him bring." I smiled. "Now, follow me." Of the dissolving hall into a long, winding, dark, tubular corridor to a cave-like space full of bursts. "Okay, let me orient you." "But how? Are we not in the realm of literary immortals where a secret pathway?" I use but being an immortal, are you not confined to the realm of the immortals? Look, as an immortal, with patience, the king of lies, the cave. "Here, you can control your author's thoughts," he said. "You can determine what he sees, hears, dreams. You can actually control his mind." The place. I struggled to comprehend the complex situation. I turned around to have and saw that the king had pressed a few buttons, and voila, a screen came alive. I could see my auto light half covered with a gray fiber duvet. A small table clock sat on a bedside locker. I moved him away from the bed and made him peer through the window to contemplate the deadening serenity of night. Peeped into the car and the portal of potential characters and ideas, and I saw fellow rejects and will-be characters agitating. Set us free, set us free. I commanded them to occupy the blood vessels and brain waves of our author. I gave them specific instructions, complete domination of our author's consciousness. We emptied out our author's mental notebooks. We occupied his thoughts and memories. The only thing he cared about was how to enflesh us and bring us, me and my fellow potential characters, into being. We made him tremble and convulse. His mind wandered into interconnected regions and floated through illumined clouds. The weight of this new experience overwhelmed him. His head ached. He was covered in his perspiration. That was when I revealed myself to him. He saw me fully formed in his mind. I became incredible. He became obsessed with nothing other than the process of writing the book which will give me life. He sat up, his back again above the reading table. He remained in a state of contemplation until he figured out will me into being. I will be the narrator of his novel, the main character, the last, a world juggler, a shaman, a literary alchemist with a mind open, even if drifting through a hallucination of a scribble on a notepad. This is the sentence of the book, Garba Dakaskus. Thank you.
Thank you very much for reading that passage. I'd like to ask, with all the, based on what you've said, right, we are inclined to believe they possess you, right, and will themselves to life. Currently, at the moment, what characters have you been speaking to in your head, and what type of stories are they willing you to write? What should we be expecting from you?
Very interesting question. And I think you're really the prince of angels. Yeah, so there is a very stubborn woman. And when I thought I understand her, I'm beginning to understand I'm not really understanding her. Yeah. Yes, I think that is all for now.
But you don't have to understand how to write a story, right?
Well, I feel it is necessary for me to understand her. I didn't understand the Kaskus. I'm not interested in understanding him, but I want to understand her.
Okay, okay. So we'll be looking forward to this understanding, and we'll be looking forward to the telling of it.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you very much. I had my fair share of questions asked. Does anybody within the audience? Okay. I would try to ask the questions in the order of which I saw the hands. So I'm leading in green. Yes, that.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Nasiba Babali, and I have two questions. Okay, sorry. So first, I want to ask, who do you write for? And why I ask who do you write for is I feel to some extent your writings can be termed a bit inaccessible. There's a lot of things that somebody needs to be familiar with before he gets. In this particular story, just like your poetry, there is a lot of allusions, there is a lot of reference to other authors, to other books, to Islamic history, to philosophy, to a lot of things. So don't you think that is going to restrict your readership? The second question is, how do you manage to write kind of genre-bending book? When you look at it, it's literary fiction. But then if you want to, it can be historical fiction, it can be a surrealist novel, there is time travel, there is some elements of philosophy. So how did you manage to achieve? Thank you.
Question. So on the question of who do I write, this is my opinion, right? I feel strongly about it. I feel if you want to write as an author, you really want to you shouldn't think of anything. You shouldn't think of readers. You shouldn't think of, just think of the story, write that story. So I feel if you have readers at the back of your mind before you begin to write, then that's will not have integrity about readers much later. Like when I was writing, I was not really interested in what people would say. But it was after I finished that I began to worry. And I was worried the book was not going to get published. I felt I wasn't I wasn't going to get a publisher. And then Abubakar showed up, and now the book is published. So help me thank him, please. And again, I didn't embark on this journey alone. Without Richard, there will be no Dakaskus. Because after I wrote the opening, me, Richard, Gimba, people, at that time were not interested, or rather we were bored with the kind of stories that were being written. We wanted to have a different kind of, it felt that the soul is always attracted to something that is new and fresh. So we had some crazy ideas. When I was writing, I must write this story. And every idea I had, I shared with him. Everything that I wrote, I sent to him. In fact, the first draft, I cannot call it a novel. I sent it to him, and when it came back, I was astonished with what I had. So, Richard, thank you very much. Yeah. And the genre bending. So that's another thing too I didn't worry about. When I was writing, I thought I was writing literary fiction because there's a lot of metafiction in it and all that. But I think there's someone who has defined, or I think I kind of like the definition. Habiba Malumfa, she said, it is dream reality or something like that. And I think I like it.
Okay, thank you.
There's someone there.
We have time. We have time. The lady in the white hijab. We'll get there, but I'm trying to ask the questions in the order in which I saw the hands.
Okay, mine isn't a question. I just want to pay a compliment. I love how you've written a story within a story. I think that's really amazing of both prose and poetry. For I am one too. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Firstly, I want to comment. You did well with imbibing Julio Calvino in the opening of your book. And my question is, there's a recurring transition in the book. It's almost he's reading and the words are carrying him along. He's understanding what he's reading, and then the next moment it's like he's flung into another world where he doesn't know who's narrating or where he is. So is it a manifestation of your experience writing where you and then you just let your subconscious mind take the lead while still maintaining the baseline and subject matter of your story?
Well, this is difficult.
You are not expecting that one, Abi.
So I think, wow. So I think when I was writing, I was just interested in being faithful to the ramblings of Garba Dakaskus. In fact, when I started, I didn't even know who was talking. Someone was just talking. But at some point, I felt this man, whoever it is that is talking, whether it's a human being or a spirit or whatever, needs to have an identity. So I think what I tried to do in the beginning, because of course I was influenced by what people call experimental literature. I don't really like that. I prefer avant-garde. So the experiment I wanted to do, because those guys placed some restrictions upon themselves in terms of structure and form and narrative and all that. What I really wanted to do, and I don't think I achieved that, was to have a narrator describing a book. Yeah, and as the narrator is describing this book, the story unfolds. But I don't think I was able to achieve that. That I've finished. Ohan Pamuk, who is one of my patron saints, he said so, that when a writer writes, that when he writes, he's like a child playing. So he sits back after writing he has done. So I think I was mostly interested in being faithful to the ramblings, the hallucinations of Dakaskus. But I also felt, and I was very conscious of that also, that it is important for the different narratives to be strung together. So I had a string. And I don't know, you said it was good, and I thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Sada?
Thank you very much. My question for Umar is, I'm interested in literary criticism. The book pushes a lot of boundaries, a lot of forms. Do you think of it also as a challenge for in terms of exploring this book as a literary critic, in exploring this book of the predetermined literary theories that have been just based on other African writers, whereby Abubakar Adams' book, I've not seen how literary critics are expanding the theory of exploring that. Did you also think of that when writing, of pushing the boundaries of literary critics, pushing the boundary of exploring what this sort of books, this new generation avant-garde books that we're seeing coming out of Northern Nigeria are doing?
Thank you very much, Sada. And I wanted to assure you, though you have asked your question, that no one will oppress you. You're my friend. You will ask your question, and thank you for it. So I like what you have said, because talking about Abubakar's book, the day we had this reading, and I think I expressed my own, he called it alternative interpretation. And I think that is like a critical way of looking at the book. So in a way, also when I was trying to figure out what to do with this book, I came across Ibrahim Al-Koni, a Libyan novelist, who said, so he's Libyan and he's writing about the deserts. He's trying to explore the mysteries of the desert. And he schooled in Russia, and he said he was taught that the novel, the city, is the center of the novel. And he said that does not sit with his own reality, because he's writing about the desert. That this desert is not a place because there's no water and all that. So for him, he now said that the human being is the center of the novel. And for him, the novel now became a magnification of the human experience, captured within a specific time and place. And that's how he was able to write all his great books. I think one of them was shortlisted or longlisted for the Man Booker International. So at some point too, I began to think what to do with this book. And I said, the emphasis has always been on place, on the human being. I loved what Abubakar did, where he made a place like the main character in his short story collection. Ala Al-Aswani did the same thing in the Yakubian building, where a building in Cairo was like the main character of his novel. So I came up with this idea that how about making the novel the center of the novel? And I think that is what I try to do, because if you look at it critically, you will see that this novel is not quite a novel in the traditional sense. It is a meditation on books, on letters. It is like a love letter to the pleasures of reading. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Okay. We have two ladies there, and so
Hello. So my question for Umar is, in your head sound like, in what language speak to you? Are they poets? Are they artists? Like, how do you envision your book in your head before it comes down?
That's very interesting. Thank you very much. I feel this is what I feel. And I feel thoughts operate within the imagination. And it's called the world of images. Ibn Arabi, the Sufi existentialist I talked about, mentioned that there is a spirit world, and there is the world of images, and there is the physical world. So when mystics, I believe that all thinkers, all writers are mystics anyway, they travel into the world of world of images, which is the world of the imagination. And that is where they get whatever it is that they get. Ben Okri mentioned something similar to this, where he said there is a place called the Book of Life among the stars. The star book, in terms of thing, does not have a language. And I love what you said, because for me, I believe it is like the writers do. I write the novel in my head before I scribble it on paper. Thank you.
so we almost do one of the gentlemen at the back.
VIP question.
Where's the VIP?
Thank you. Even though Omar didn't mention it, but reading this a new book, as well as his poetry, one could see the influence of other writers that he hasn't mentioned. For example, Carlos Ruiz, the Spanish novelist, and the Australian novelist Peter Carey, My Life I Speak. We have talked about this. There are also a number of other influences. My question is, how do you manage to keep out all these influences when you sit down to write? Managing to write something which is original while also at the same time acknowledging the influence of other writers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mala Ismail. So I've always said it that I'm not afraid of the anxiety. I don't have that anxiety of influence, because I believe that literature, knowledge does not exist in a vacuum. There must be that interaction, that relationship among writers, thinkers, painters, poets across time and across generations. So for me, in writing this book, yes, I had a lot of influences. But what they did for me essentially is to embolden me. When I read them, I became emboldened. I was like, oh, so it can be done this way. Oh, I will try to do it. So I hope that answers your question, sir.
Okay. So we can take our VIP question, and then we'll round this up.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk. No, I'm in the front so everyone can see me. Umar, congratulations on this wonderful, wonderful, amazing book. I have read it, and I've been waiting for this book to come out for so long. And the first time I read it, which was the same thing that happened the first time I read your poetry, I'm like, I can't reconcile the two, right? I can't reconcile the author and the poetry. It shocked me, right? And the same thing happened with the novel. Maybe the poetry kind of, puts me in a mood to kind of expect the unexpected from you. So Congratulations. I wanted this book to come out so bad, right? So that people will ask you the kind of questions that I'm going to ask you now, and they'll stop asking it to me. What were you high on when you wrote this book?
Interested, I love this. I love this question. So recently I was watching conversation between Salman Rushdie and Marlon James, because I'm doing something similar to what Marlon James did in A Brief History of Seven Killings. So I'm listening to him a lot. And Salman Rushdie said, somebody, I can't remember who, said, reading this book, that the person felt that Marlon James was okay. She said something like, this is a mixture of Jamaican jazz and some primo ganja. And Marlon James, his response was that he wasn't high on any drugs or whatever before writing this book. So interestingly, yesterday I was having a conversation with Star, and Star had read parts of the book, and she said when they were in school, they studied Dambuzo Merekera, his House of Hunger and all that, and they were looking at it from the context of literary madness. And she felt that my book could also be studied from the context of literary madness. But unlike Dambuzo's book, he was studied as a madman. But they feel, she felt that this book could be studied as the writer intentionally being mad. So I feel that it is not the writer. I feel that the writer is still the person you know. I feel it is Dakaskus that is actually mad. So sincerely speaking, in the beginning, I had to be Dakaskus to be able to write and think like him. And I believe you know that. Just the same way I felt when you wrote. So everybody says that Turai is the most beautiful character in your book. I love Turai, but I disagree. For me, the best character is Karimbao. And because I love what you did to that character. And I think it shows that you're a very generous person, because at the end of the day, Lalo went with the intention of killing him. But when he saw how life has so much dealt with him, he couldn't do anything. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, especially for that last question. I remember when I first started reading the book and my wife asked me, how is it going? I said, I'm not convinced he wrote this book sober. So thank you very much for that last question. And thank you everyone else here for spending time. For those who still have questions, I'm sure Omar will be signing books and answering questions. So please feel free